My guest this week is Dave Hill. Dave is a comedian, writer, actor, and musician, originally from Cleveland, but now living in New York City. He has appeared on The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Girls 5 Ever, Joe Parrott Talks With You, Inside Amy Schumer, After Midnight, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, The Tick, The Jim Gaffigan Show, and he recently played a Devo-obsessed weed dealer in the film Drunk Bus. Dave has also been a regular contributor to public radio's This American Life, and also hosted his own radio show, The Goddamn Dave Hill Show, on WFMU for 5 years. Dave also performs live comedy all over the world, and he appears regularly with fellow comedians such as Janine Garofalo, Tom Papa, and Gary Goldman, and is open for musical acts like Snoop Dogg, Tenacious D, Broken Social Scene, Quicksand, and Rhett Miller. But Dave also plays guitar and sings in his own rock band, Valley Lodge, whose song Go is the theme song for HBO's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. But that's not all, because Dave has also written for the New York Times, the Paris Review, Salon, GQ, McSweeney's, the New York Observer, and Guitar World, among other publications, and is the author of 4 books: Parking the Moose, Dave Hill Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Tasteful Nudes, and his new book, The Awesome Game, One Man's Incredible Globe-Crushing Hockey Odyssey. He also smells really great. You can ask anyone. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Revolutions Per Movie, the one and only Dave Hill. Hi, Dave.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so honored. You're the most rock person I've had.
That's a lot of. That can't possibly. I mean, I am pretty rockin'. Let's be clear, but that still seems impossible to me.
Well, then describe the new guitar you got to me.
I did get the red one. I have 7 million guitars. Too many. My inner 15-year-old is thrilled. My grown man is very concerned at this point. My girlfriend is equally concerned that I got this one came in the mail the other day.
Wow. What is it?
It is a Wild Audio, which is Zakk Wylde, from Ozzy Osbourne, and
sure,
he's playing with Panter currently, and they were kind enough to send me this.
So what's on the fretboard?
I think runes of some sort.
Okay.
Which I guess, what is that, like Viking symbols or something?
It really helps.
It helps, yeah, when you're trying to find like a open G chord or something.
Yeah, that is amazing looking. Pointed headstock. So your journey never ends.
I mean, let's be clear. I mean, I'm well-rounded. Just have a very classic, amazing Telly style guitar by Russ Guitars here. People often think that I only play pointy guitars, which is fine by me.
Yeah.
But I'm
all shapes, square, round, oval.
Got a Firebird over here. Got a couple SGs over here.
Well, this is kind of related, because knowing what guitar to pick up to do what you need to play, I kind of wondered about how you choose what to do with your many talents. For instance, you have this upcoming show, Dave Hill, Caveman in a Spaceship.
Yeah.
And it's described, it says it combines stand-up storytelling, sweet guitar solos, ill-advised feats of strength, and at least one BMX stunt.
Yes. And that's at Soho Playhouse in New York City. September 16th, October 11th. 4 weeks. I'm just getting it out there because I really need to sell some tickets.
The thing is, how do you know what to make as a song lyric versus a chapter in a book versus something you want to tell on stage? How do you divide your time up with what's in your head?
I mean, there are some things that kind of like are all three or eventually, like right now I wrote a song that'll be a part of this show, Caveman in a Spaceship. There's a song that will be in that show because there's like a couple song story type things. And then most of it is talking other than that. But one of the songy type things came from actually a story in one of my books, my most recent book, The Awesome Game, One Man's Incredible Globe-Crushing Hockey Odyssey. I'll stop hawking my wares, I promise.
It's okay. You have an impressive impressive pedigree, my friend. So,
Oh, thank you. This is always nice to hear. I'm always grateful to hear nice things about me. Because my inner voice is just mean to me all day. So it's really delightful to talk to you.
join the club.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. So what, sometimes things will be in one form and then wind up in another form or vice versa. Kind of, try to make something stretch as far as it'll go,
Right.
Repurpose, like you use the whole animal,
Right.
as it were.
Well, coming from Ohio, one of the greatest rock and roll states of all time.
Yeah.
You've got between, Zapp and the Ohio Players and the Breeders and Brainiac and Guided by Voices and James Gang, Devo.
Raspberries.
Exactly. What is it about Ohio that can create something like the Cramps, but at the same time, Chrissie Hynde?
I mean, one thing I love about Ohio, which I live in New York, but I go back to Ohio quite a bit. And, especially spent a lot of time there in the last few years. I think there's an extra 2 hours in the day there. Though that could just be, I honestly think that 2 hours comes from, though I did say this before I had a dog, but part of it is that living in New York, by the time you get out the door and get to the dog park and come back from the dog park, somehow like 2 hours have passed. And in Ohio, you just walk outside and the dog action is happening right away. There's not 45 minutes leading up to getting to the dog park and all that. So I think that, in my own life, but I don't know. There is something to it when I go there. I somehow squeeze a nap in. I do everything. I exercise, I meditate. I do all the things I want to do. Exercise, meditate. I get some writing done. I play some guitar. I do some drawing, painting, whatever. And then I have time to hang out at night. Somehow, but again, I'm only referring to my own life. But
sure,
I guess my point is that, I don't know, there's just like a little more space to maybe kind of grab hold of the magical forces of creativity in Ohio. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, sort of. I think it can be inspiring and yeah, there is so much stuff and happening. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, to your point, like all the bands you mentioned, without even trying,
yeah,
so much great stuff.
There's like an underdog spirit to Ohio too. I feel like when I had Jerry Casale of Devo on the show, I asked him. I said, "How long did it take Ohio to embrace Devo?" And he's like, "Oh, really late, like '81." And I feel like sometimes so many bands are misunderstood in Ohio that are creating great art till later. I don't know. I mean, do you find that? I don't know if there's a competitive nature about it or what, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is true. Again, anything I say, I think it's maybe my, obviously my own perspective on it, but there is something like, the first time I did a show in Denmark, I did this show, a comedy show. I was like there for 2 nights, and that right off the stage, there was like a green room. And, the first night it was like a show with a handful of comedians. And right off the stage, everyone, the comedians are all watching each other on the monitor, and everyone's speaking Danish except for me. And I had a good set, and I could hear the comedians laughing I could hear them laughing at the punchlines and stuff. So I was, really happy because, you want your peers to respect you more than that matters more than anything, really. Sometimes anyway. And I was like, oh, the show's going well, but I'm really psyched that the comedians are in. And then when I walked off stage, they acted like I had just come from the bathroom or something. Like there was no acknowledgement of that I had even been on stage. Nothing. And I was like, this is so weird, because in America, you would at least lie and be like, hey, great set. Even if you didn't see a second of it, you'd be like, hey, nice one. People just lie. So after the set, the guy that was taking me around, he's like, oh, it's a good show. And I'm like, yeah, I thought it went well. But, when I came off stage, the comedians didn't even acknowledge that I had performed. And he's like, "Oh, welcome to Denmark." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "It's called the Law of Jante, which is like the Scandinavian thing. And it's from this book, I think, A Fugitive Crosses His Tracks or Covers His Tracks, this book. And in it, there's this town, Jante, and the laws of it are like, you're no better than us. You're not smarter than us. You're not special." And it's all these things, basically, tall poppy syndrome and all that.
Right.
So he's telling me this, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's Cleveland. That's Ohio." That, to my experience, I was like, I feel like we kind of do that in Ohio. Like, don't get too big for, and I think in like Vietnam or Philippines or something, it's called crab bucket syndrome, where if you probably know, the crab that's trying to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs pull it down. But then it becomes the question, are the other crabs pulling it down, or is it just pulling itself back down into the bucket, or letting itself go back down in the bucket? And I became fascinated with all these different cultural explanations of the same thing, because I was like, oh, this feels like my mindset, or the Ohio mindset, which I'm not saying everyone has, but I was like, oh, this resonates with me. And I actually found it like kind of charming in a way, that I was like, oh, I'm glad that this is happening in other places. So, in somewhere as lovely as Denmark, they're doing the same horrible thing to each other. Something like that. But I don't know. But I love Ohio.
No, I found that with my time in Ohio, coming from the West Coast to Ohio to play with Guided by Voices, it was a kind of a culture shock in a way, where here everybody's like, "Oh my God, you dropped your pick on stage. That was amazing." And there, even being in Guided by Voices in Dayton, the Dayton people didn't give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you had to leave Dayton for it to resonate. So yeah, it's just kind of fascinating. But I do know my wife's from Glasgow. She says in the UK that also happens a lot. People just don't want people to get kind of above their station. It is fascinating. But I like the descriptions you said. The crab thing is going to haunt me every night now. I won't be able to unsee that.
Well, yeah, the second part of it, like, are you dragging yourself down there? So,
yeah,
that's very haunting.
Well, I want to ask you, you've toured as a musician, you tour as a comedian. Is the day-to-day and night-to-night similar in both those worlds? Is one of them more taxing than another?
I would say comedy is way more taxing. I feel like I've done both enough to feel like I can, I've done both and still do both. So I think I don't think the craft or whatever is any easier. I mean, to write a great song, and to write a great song is probably harder, honestly, than it is to write jokes that'll make someone laugh. I mean, that's hard, but to go up on stage by yourself is way harder. And I mean, granted, now I'm using my guitar a lot more, and then part of the show I bring out a drummer and bass player, so I'm just kind of blurring the lines pretty massively at this point.
I love that.
Which I'm trying to do more and more, just out of sheer laziness. Just only wanting to leave the house once as opposed to twice.
It doesn't come off that way, but that's so funny. I could see that being like, let's wrap these two together.
Well, it's like, it is nice to go tell some jokes, and that's very gratifying, but to also rip some solos and, things like that. Like, especially, I've done a couple tours in the last year opening for Tenacious D, and they have a full band, but they're really combining everything all at once. And so to go out on tour with them and do like arenas where I can just stand there and talk, but then like also be ripping a solo really loud to, 15,000 people or whatever. It's really fun, obviously.
Oh, I have a question about that. Like, as an opener, do they let you use the full PA? Like, when I go see Cheap Trick open for Rod Stewart, it's like,
Oh,
oh, they don't have them through the mains,
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm on stage, so I don't know, but they're the nicest guys in the world. So I would assume that I have.
I assume that they'd let you use the
I've
full
never
thing.
questioned it until now. I mean, though, and also, their drummer, Scott, and their bass player, John, play with me during my set. So, though it still doesn't answer the PA question. Now I'm really wondering this. I'm gonna text Jack. I'm gonna text Jack Black right now. That's my subtle way of just throwing in that I have his number. Shameless.
Well, you've picked something I'm so excited to talk about. As a member of a Rolling Stones coven, you picked the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus.
Right, I did.
So, it was shot in 1968. We didn't see it until 1996, except for the footage in The Kids Are All Right with The Who playing a quick one. Where did you hear about this film, and where did you first see it?
Well, that was, Kids Are All Right, that little bit in there. So I knew of it, and then, whether it's true or not, whatever the legend was that the Stones weren't happy with it or whatever, so it never came to light. So I think I bought the DVD of it like sometime in the last 18 years, just because I remember where I was living when I got it. And that was, so sometime in the last 18 years I bought it. And it's just amazing. And surprising, not surprising, but like, I kind of come away like, Marianne Faithful is really the star of that whole thing, I think.
Yeah, there's so many high water marks in it in a funny way. Well, where do the Stones stand in your tower of rock icons? Are they pretty high up there?
Yeah, it would, absolutely. I wouldn't say like, oh, I could sit and go down every wormhole about the Stones in the way that some people can, but certainly, way so far up there in the same way that, even as a sort of lapsed Catholic, I'll talk tons of shit about the Catholic Church, but I'm still very careful not to take any big swipes at Jesus Christ, the man himself. In the same way, I wouldn't do that to the Stones. They're not to be messed with, really. But to be clear, I say the same thing about Satan. So just don't want Jesus to get
naturally, of
all
course,
things balanced. But maybe I said this in the email, but I still say like Exile on Main Street, amazing album, and this is the least rock and roll application of that album, but I still think it should be the only album played in any restaurant should be that album.
Why is that?
I just think it's the only album that it's not too invasive. You can put it like one of the things I love about the UK is they don't really play music in bars, pubs, restaurants.
Right.
It's like it's not as common, whereas in America it seems to be like volume is key in every situation, which I hate. But one of my main things that you go into a restaurant or a bar and if the music they're playing is crappy, then for me it calls the whole operation into question. Like there was this French restaurant by my house, and no disrespect to John Mayer at all, but I went in there. It was like a charming place. Had drinks there a few times, and every time I was in there, John Mayer came on. I think as part of like, those like, I don't know if people still use them, but the like music services that restaurants and stuff use, where it's like playlists that they aren't even involved in.
Right, they just pay a fee.
Yeah, something like that. And so John Mayer kept coming on, and then finally I was like, if this is what's going on the stereo, what's going on in the kitchen? This place can't be trusted. And I never returned. Even though I had had a few good meals and the drinks were good, I was like, I don't trust this place. I have to leave.
Yeah, no, Exile would be good. By the time it gets a Ventilator Blues, you're like dessert time.
Yeah.
It's
the perfect
doing the check.
Perfect dinner record.
The weird thing about the project too is I didn't know that Michael Lindsay Hogg, who did Let It Be and the Rain and Paperback Writer videos, and he did the Jumping Jack Flash videos. He even did Start Me Up. Like, he was the Stones and Beatles videographer, for quite a while. And this project originally was going to be the Small Faces, the Who, and the Rolling Stones on a train as a tour, setting up a circus in different towns. And eventually Pete Townsend was like, I'm going to have the same problem with Keith Moon that you're going to have with Keith Richards. He's like, we're not going to be able to be on a train with each other for very long.
Oh.
And they kind of packed it up. But then the idea was to do something like this, to just kind of document the idea. But I guess it had been years in the making. It's really fascinating to think about this as a TV show, too. Like, there would be commercials in this if it had played on British television in 1968. It would have cut away to, a shampoo commercial or a beer commercial or a smoke.
Or Body on Tap, the shampoo with beer in it. Somehow that came across when you said shampoo and beer. It's hard not to think Body on Tap.
I wish I had that. I need Body on Tap. I just need body. That's
Your
it.
hair looks great. I hope you're
thank
not
you.
down on it.
No, I'm not down on it. It's just, the fake Portland humidity doing its job.
Sure.
But it is kind of amazing that the Stones kind of open it up to other artists. Jethro Tull with a very strange cameo on guitar. I don't know if you knew that. Do you know who's playing guitar for them? Tony Iommi.
Oh, I did know this. Yes.
Yeah, Tony Iommi just stood in for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think I did know this because I just read Geezer Butler's book, and that's mentioned in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a weird grab. The film is full of part lip sync, like this as a live vocal. I love when, like, Jethro Tull's miming is so herky-jerky, and, like, it doesn't match with the music. It's like, it's just like they're playing something really wild. I don't even think they're hitting the notes. They're just making everything look wild. And supposedly, it's one of the first instances of Ian Anderson trying to stand on one foot to play the flute.
Oh, wow. That's history right there. Wait, so I'm sorry. You're saying they lip synced the whole thing? That was backing track?
The majority of stuff is live, like The Who and Taj Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Marianne Faithful is singing to a backing track.
Yeah, but it's still great.
Oh, it's amazing. Were you ever into, like, Jethro Tull? Because I missed out on Jethro Tull. Did not hit me.
I think I was into it in the way that I was just happy to have access to rock. Like when it was coming down the pike, Jethro Tull, I was like, and like would have been right around, not when it came out, but like, Aqualung, that riff was like a riff, you would learn when you're just learning guitar. So,
oh, sure. Right.
but yeah, it never was in my, I guess I always respected it, but I was always kind of like, I don't know. I just think like anything you're getting from Jethro Tull, you're getting better from Led Zeppelin. Not that they're that similar, but
I know what you mean.
If you're getting hobbits involved and all that,
yeah,
Tolkien and all that, Tolkien riffs, I mean, Led Zeppelin, look no further,
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I was wondering, like, who could we have switched out in this film? Imagine if Zepp had stepped in. It's 68.
I think it would have been too much. Yeah. Well, it would have been too soon. 68 would have been a year too soon, right?
Well, when did they start?
I think 69 was the first record, right? And so Sabbath was not, neither one of those were options yet. At least not at that level.
Right.
If I'm getting my timeline correct.
Yeah, I've thought about this because it is interesting. The Stones are opening it up to these smaller groups. I mean, the Who are known, but Jethro Tull's like a relatively new band at this stage. And I never got the feeling that the Stones were necessarily like a generous band. I always thought of them as some sort of kind of closed camp.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly they shut the whole thing down just because they didn't look cool or whatever. Shame on them.
You watch it now and you have trouble seeing what they have trouble with, but the Who footage is pretty phenomenal. They shot all afternoon into the evening, into the morning, and you can just it's one of
Yeah.
the few instances in the show where you can actually hear the crowd through the mics on stage.
Hmm.
People are getting into their version of a quick one.
It's awesome. I mean, they, I don't know. I know I said Marianne Faithful, but yeah, they rocked the hardest in terms of rock. The Marianne Faithful thing to me was just, I was like, just captivated.
There's so much, rock male energy in this film, except for Marianne Faithful and Yoko. What
Hmm.
what is it about Marianne Faithful that makes her performance stand out in this?
I mean, she's kind of at the peak of her power. I mean, she's always at the peak of her powers, but, I just think it was just kind of like, she just seemed like she had just levitated in from like the English countryside or
Yes.
something. And like she was kind of in this other element that felt just completely apart from the rest of it
Yeah.
in a great way.
Yeah, she's just holding court, doing nothing but just, you know, lip syncing and staring above the
Yeah.
camera eye line as the camera slowly moves around her. She knows the power she possesses.
She had a bustle in her hedgerow. We all wonder what it means, but I think she had it.
Did you get a sense there's that whole scene with Mick and John Lennon sitting there trying to be funny, like John Lennon to me seems naturally funny. Mick doesn't seem funny to me. Like he's trying to hold his own against John's wit.
Yeah, I don't really have any memory of Mick Jagger being like particularly witty.
Yeah.
It's not in my head.
But do you find that musicians want to be comedians? Because I tend to find that musicians think they're hilarious.
Yeah, I mean that's always the thing is like people always say, yeah, comedians want to be musicians and musicians want to be comedians, but I also, as someone who is both, I could say that just leads to other feelings of eventually your insecurity will win and you will feel like you're neither. Or just whereas I kind of feel a lot of days.
Yes.
You feel like you're the dog wherever you go, welcome but not the same.
Sure. Well, then how do you rise above it? Like, how do you then do the work?
I don't know. You just got to keep going, I think, And also, as I think as I get older, I used to think like, oh, how am I gonna know when my career is sustainable? Like, what, will I know? Well, I feel like this is gonna work. And now, as I get older, I'm more like, it's been going on so long that I've been doing this stuff for a living and not having anything to do with, more conventional lifestyle or, whatever, working for the man. But like, I just kind of feel like I'm feral at this point and there's no turning, it's not like I can go to grad school at this point or something.
Right.
I mean, I could, but like, I have, today, every day I always have some moment where I'm like, that's it. I quit. I'm done with all of it. And then I was like, and then what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
Tough guy like that, Yeah, what am I going to show up somewhere?
Go be a chef at that restaurant around the corner that plays John Mayer? What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's not going to work. Like, I mean, right now my lifestyle is like hanging out with my dog all the time.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just like, well, I can't not do that.
Right.
I mean, when I'm on tour or whatever, on the road or whatever, it's not that, but I just, even that alone, I'm like, I can't not do that. So, and I don't know, I just figured I gotta ride this out another I don't know how many years, and then I'll just be sitting there and covered in crumbs in my own fluids.
You've already gotten through the NFT phase of the world. You survived that.
I survived it without ever even understanding
I know.
it.
So
is it still happening? I still don't know what it was. I don't understand what Bitcoin is either.
me either. I think that if you write a couple other tech waves out that we don't understand, I think then you know that you're an artist and you're feral and it's dog time and you just have to be who you are. There's no doubt about it.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I would do at this point other than do the things that I do, you know. Maybe I would just change the balance of them, do less of stop doing one thing and do more of another thing or something. But really, I just kind of want to have snacks, different, not even full meals, really, with my girlfriend and our dog, and not really. Everything else is just kind of just filling in the time in between.
In between snacks.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Just kind of like got to do something.
Yeah, like write a fifth book. You're like, wow.
Yeah, you have to do something. Yeah, so you might as well.
But writing a book is such a massive undertaking. Most people have never written one.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. I kind of do it to try to get my dad to notice me, honestly. And so far, it hasn't really worked. He knows. He knows that. I think he's read a couple of them, and he's like, "Oh, you working? What are you working on?" But and I don't know. It seems like a grown-up thing to do. You go like, "I've written books. Look at me." So that's one of the really the only two reasons to do it are to be like, "Now, do you love me, Dad?" And then go, "Look at me. I wrote. Look at me. Look at that."
Is he Ohio still?
My dad, yeah, he lives.
There you
in Ohio.
go. He's like, yeah, there it is. The Ohio crab bucket situation.
Well, you gotta do. You can't be like, "Oh, Dad, I'm in this new web series." It's not gonna. It doesn't really fly.
The other thing that's really kind of incredible in this show is that Yoko is hiding under a black blanket for the first part of John Lennon playing Your Blues with Keith Richards on bass and Eric Clapton on guitar and Mitch Mitchell on drums. And White Album has just come out. Do you ever see Yoko walking around New York? Have you ever had a Yoko experience?
I don't think so. I've seen a lot of sort of very famous people, but I don't think I've ever seen her.
Yeah.
I've seen Sean Lennon.
Right.
I saw him outside of a restaurant once, and
Was he covered with a blanket?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
He seemed to be just wearing clothes. And then I did see Robert De Niro walking with with what looked like a tool. What's that called? Like a tool case or whatever?
Oh,
a toolbox. I swear, but it might have just been a briefcase. But he was just walking down the street very slowly with this thing. And we were the only two people on the street just kind of strolling through the West Village. And I've since met him. He was very nice, I'll say that.
Hey, Tool Man.
Hey, Tool Man. I'm just naming famous people I've seen. But no, I guess I should have just said no, I haven't seen Yoko. As I understand it, she doesn't live in the city anymore.
Yeah.
She lives like in a undisclosed location upstate, I think, or somewhere. But I think she obviously has a tiny studio apartment she maintains somewhere. That's all she could afford. No, I think she still has the Dakota or something. I don't know. But I read this somewhere. But to answer your question, your Yoko-based question, I have not. But I would like to meet her.
I got to meet her. I got to work with her on a project for the Harvey Milk School.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
We did a charity record, John Cameron Mitchell from Hedvig and Angry Inch and myself.
I know him.
Yeah, he's one of my dear friends.
Oh, well, you could probably say I talked to Dave Hill and he'd be like, oh, wait, who? He probably doesn't know my name.
It was amazing. She came in and did a song with Yola Tango, and she was really struggling singing the song. And she said, I've never done a cover before.
Oh.
That wasn't a Beatles song. And she just had trouble. So she had John go into the recording booth and she's like, just slap me, not on the ass, but on the back when it's time for me to hit the next verse. So John was in there like, boom, boom. It was quite the scene.
That is wild. That's a moment you don't expect.
Yeah, she was really cool. She was lovely, and she would look at you in the eyes when she was talking to you and hold on to your arms when it was like really powerful. And then she was just gone. It was like, but there was a moment where John and myself were like, I think we're going to get invited to the Dakota. We're her best friends now, right? I just had that feeling. We were so nervous and she put us at ease.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
Yeah, she was amazing. And in this, it's crazy. White Album, I don't know where you stand on it. One of my favorite albums of all time.
I mean, all the Beatles albums. It's not my favorite, but you can't go wrong. Those Beatles. imagine what they could have accomplished.
Yeah, they could have become Badfinger.
Yes, or The Action.
Oh my God, that'd been nice.
Well, the Action where they were like kind of like teed up to be the next Beatles, right?
I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah.
But when it like the Move and all these other things be in the same conversation, there's probably a ton of bands that were like supposed to be the next Beatles, right?
I feel like something, maybe they were involved with George Martin or something. I don't know.
That makes sense. Someone had to take on their responsibilities. I mean, they're not playing live anymore, which is what's kind of cool about this performance is you get to see a song from the White Album played live. And, he even does the thing where he backs away during the end of the song and sings really far from the mic. And then Yoko, he eggs her on. It's so sweet. She's just standing back while this violin player is playing this kind of jam afterwards. But he's constantly, the first 2 minutes, John just keeps going, go to the mic. Come on, step up to the mic. And Yoko eventually does. And then you get a whole lot of Yoko, a one-time affair.
Yeah, bringing the heat.
I think so. I'm a Yoko fan. I love Fly and all those things. I mean, she was those first Plastic Ono albums are like krautrock before krautrock.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I got no beef with her. I don't know if anyone does still, right?
I think people have come around. Yeah, just what a weird thing to just have so much thrown towards you for just being married to a Beatle. But I guess people couldn't handle Two Virgins or Revolution 9, and it's like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Being any sort of Beatles adjacent, I feel like would be difficult.
Yeah, even Linda, totally made fun of for being in Wings.
Yeah.
They're just like, I just want my loved one to be in a band with me. What's the big deal? Like I want to spend all my time with them.
Plus Wings, I don't know. I'm a fan.
Me too.
They did some cool stuff.
Well, we have to get into the Stones here because this is the section that was the Stones basically were like, this is not good enough. And it does start out pretty slow. I mean, to make a really draggy version of Jumping Jack Flash is kind of weird. You can see that they're thinking too much about it. Like they're kind of worried. There's flash pots going off and lighting effects, and they're really trying to be the Stones, but it just doesn't lift off. It takes a couple songs. But the fact that, they do No Expectations and Parachute Woman and Nicky Hopkins is playing, it's the last performance filmed of Brian Jones. It's like, I don't get why they would lock this away. It's a pretty amazing capsule of what's going on at them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, when they had a lot to work with. They could be like, we're just not going to show this to anyone because we're doing all this, we're doing 7,000 other amazing things. Have you ever seen, and I don't know if it came out at the time, I just got it like whenever, that Charlie Is My Darling?
Yeah, Jeff Vierzig came on and talked about that. And that film is pretty amazing. Hearing Brian Jones talk about like, well, I don't really consider myself a pop star. And it's just very sweet, precise language. And then the riots that were happening.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Incredible.
Yeah. And I love how they're talking to this woman, this Irish woman who's like probably in her 40s. And it seems like she's just like, I don't know, maybe I could have a band. And like, which is, of course, is the right attitude to have. But also it seemed like at the time coming from a place where like pop stars and rock bands were like still such a new thing that it wasn't even fully defined as to where like now anyone over the age of 30 is probably questioning whether they should be even thinking about trying it, which again is a ridiculous notion. I think people should rock always.
And they do.
But, I mean, and sometimes people should keep it to themselves sometimes, to be clear. It doesn't all need to be shared, but...
It was interesting. The rock critic, Richard Meltzer, I was talking to him. He wrote The Aesthetic of Rock, one of the first rock books in the 60s, and, got fired from Rolling Stone for not listening to records and writing reviews. He was just a total punk. Wrote for Blue Oyster Cult, lyrics for them, wrote I'm Burning for You and stuff.
One of the greatest songs of all time, I think, Burning for You.
It's incredible.
I think it ticks so many boxes for me. I know some people are going to be like, oh, come on, man. But I swear, it's like rock, it's great pop, it's total bombast. It's, so many amazing things.
Yeah. Instantly memorable. You can't unhear it after the first time you hear it. But he was just talking about how in the 50s, rock and roll just disappeared. It was done. It was like, all right, now here's Doris Day and everything is... It wasn't until the British invasion that he's like, oh, rock is back. In a big way. And then it never left.
Yeah.
And now it never stops.
Yeah, and just, so many amazing things coming from that tiny landmass.
I know. It's incredible. Well, the climax of this, 6 or 7 song performance that the Stones do is their 9-minute version of Sympathy for the Devil. It is a great version of it. They've got, people playing bongos and, Brian Jones is playing maraca. It's just one of the greatest rhythms of all time. It's killer. And you get to see Keith Richards smoke on the guitar and do all that really tight noodling. And it sounds amazing. But there's a section where Mick goes down to the floor and starts pulling his shirt off. And he's got these watercolored devil images painted on his body. And they're really like soft looking devil images, like very pastel looking, very sad looking devils, very unthreatening. And you can tell that immediately he's just going to wash it off. But it's so funny how threatening he probably thought this was going to be. Like, I'm going to blow the viewers' minds, but it's so obvious it's not a tattoo. No dedication to the devil at all. Just fleeting.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's kind of cooler that it's just drawn on, Because you're like, maybe he just draws other devils later. I don't even know. Maybe he's got different devils under his shirt all the time. To this day.
Do you have tattoos?
No.
I don't either.
I considered it momentarily at one point. When my mom died, I thought I would get a tattoo to commemorate her. And then I was telling my manager about it, and did I say her? It was my manager, not my mom's. I forget what I said. But she's like, I never met your mom, but I'm pretty sure, just based on what you've told me about her, that she would never want to be remembered that way. And I was like, oh yeah, you're completely right.
Oh, that's sweet.
She would hate that.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, so I didn't do it, and then I actually have nightmares that I have tattoos. Like I wake up, like I'm in my dream, I'm like, oh fucking hell, what did I get that for? That's so stupid. Which is not to say I'm against tattoos. I think some people, I have a handful of friends where I'm like, that's working really well.
Yeah, like Rollins.
Henry Rollins comes to... I will say I like Henry Rollins tattoos in that what's it called? Someone told me this is called patchwork, where you just have random shit on you.
Okay.
That I learned that's the style that I like, is when you just have random bullshit. I don't like when it's like planned out koi fish going into dragon or I don't like any of that sort of stuff.
The
But when
illustrated
people
man.
just, yeah, when people just have like, be like, I got this random thing and then I got this other random thing. I think that I know I have friends who have that, and I think it looks good. That's just my preference. Nothing against your listeners with sleeves.
Absolutely. It's just didn't happen. I also never could have think of anything that I just wanted to commit to. I just had, my whole life, I would have had like at one point a madness tattoo. And then, I'd be 12, of course, but then I would have had a Devo one and a Wall of Voodoo and a Residence and then REM and then Replacements, Husker Du. It's just like, that's all I can think about would be a music tattoo.
Yeah, but then it's like, well, I don't know. I like donuts. Should I get a donut? I don't know. Where does it end? I think for me, this is just me. I know because anytime you say this to tattoo people, they're like, how dare you? But I just think any visual, I'm just like, well, if I like that so much, I would just have the picture of it on my wall or something, or I have friends who get like quotes from literature that mean so much to them, and I'm like, well, that's what books are for, buddy. And or they'll have like a quote from literature like somewhere on their body where they're like, it's just here to remind me that I'm like, well, how? You can't see it. It's on your back.
Well, it's so funny because
I know it's there.
Yeah, because the thing about the Stones thing is, I always feel like the Stones wanted to be more evil than they could pull off. You know what I mean? Like they were the bad boys. They had kind of the sinister imagery. They were the bad, dark kids of rock. But compared to so many other things, I just never kind of believed it. Like Goat's Head Soup, I'm like, you actually get like a severed goat head in a soup bowl, in a stew, as an insert for the record. But I never was like, oh, they're devils, they're leaning into the dark.
Yeah, it wasn't like, a Venom album or something where like when I would see like Venom albums in the record store, on Coventry growing up, I would just be like, oh God, man, I can't even touch that. Yes. It's scaring me.
Yes. You should be scared to touch the record.
Devil on the cover of that record. Like I would be like, I'd have to find a sink immediately and wash my hands because I touched him.
Well, even Blue Oyster Cult or Zeppelin, they played with the iconography in a more convincing way, I think.
Well, Led Zeppelin, to me, was the first music that ever scared me, like in a good way, to where my dad bought Led Zeppelin 4, which was like a real like anomaly in his record collection because he was more like into jazz and classical music. But he's still, to this day, he's 92, is like really into Zeppelin. And is really the only rock band he's ever been into, to my knowledge. And he brought that record home, and I remember just hearing it and being like, something's going on here that's way bigger than just four guys rocking out.
Right.
And like, the album, there's no words. It's like there's some old guy with sticks on the cover. Like, what the balls on these guys, It scared me.
Yeah.
I was just like, something's up with this, and I want in. I was like 7 years old.
Yeah, I think being scared by music is killer. I loved, I remember this is way over here, but like getting the Ronaldo and the Loaf records on Ralph Records. They were like the Residence adjacent, and it's all gibberish, but it just scared me because there was no language on it. It was all made up. And you read on the thing, it said there are no electronic instruments on this record, but you're listening to it and you're like, how? This is not on Earth. And then the cover by Gary Panter was really messed up too. It was called Songs for Swinging Larvae. And it was like a weird, like a larva basically making out with a good looking guy, So,
yeah, I mean, that's, if you're going to do it, I'm pulling it up as I really love Gary Panter.
yeah.
Do you know he worked on Pee-wee's Playhouse?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he did the Screamers, that awesome image.
Oh, yeah. That's a great cover.
Massive fan. But then on the back cover, it was all little images, like little drawings, and I just was trying to attach the song to the image, even though they weren't related. Like, he just made an album cover, right? And they put the songs on it, on the back of it. But as a kid,
yeah,
you're like, everything is purposeful, and they planned every single part of this out, including how many sticks that guy has in his backpack.
Yeah, exactly. And where is he going? We don't know. They know.
You're like, he's got more than 4 sticks, but it says 4 sticks at some point. Wait, I'm totally confused. Well, Dave, at the end of every episode, I ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on what we're talking about. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how many watercolored devils painted on your body would you give the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus?
I would give it 10 because it it's like a world. I'm like, I want to crawl. I want to let go.
Yes.
Back in time and be there. And that's really, when I see things like that, that's what it makes me feel like,
Yeah.
So I would give it a 10. But, I would say this. Did we talk about Slade and Flame? I would give that a 10 too.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
I mean, maybe I should give Rock and Roll Circus a 9 and give Slade and Flame a 10.
I think that's fair. I think that's the first time it's been done on the show that a film has crept in the last minute and overtook the original topic. So
I know, which we should just do a whole new episode.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on Revolutions Per Movie. My guest here is Dave Hill. Today we're going to be talking about Slade in Flame.
Did anyone do that one yet?
No.
Oh man, I've screwed up. No, I love that, and I'm the biggest Slade fan, I believe. Even though there are some people will say it's Monty Connor from Roadrunner, or I don't know what label he's at right now, but someone told me he's the biggest Slade fan in America, but I believe I am.
Well, I'd love to have you back on to talk Slade and Flame at some point, because I feel like that is a really deep cut that many people haven't seen. And it sounds like, as the world's largest Slade fan, it's you.
Top 5, easy. I just downgraded myself.
And the other four above you are the members of Slade. So
yeah, and their guitar player's name is Dave Hill. So
that's right. Oh my God.
And that's total coincidence. Even
same haircut too.
Like that has yeah, it's exactly. It has nothing to do with my love of the band.
Well, everyone, check out Slade and Flame, as well as Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus. Dave, it was so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Rip it up.
Rip it out. Ace Frehley.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show's a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie, and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!